It all started on a rainy Thursday night in downtown Chicago. The kind of night where the air smelled like wet asphalt and something just felt off. Not bad, necessarily. Just off. The clouds hung low, pressing down on the city like a warning. And inside one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, an upscale fusion spot called La Bravura, a storm of a different kind was quietly brewing. The maitre d' stood tall, posture rigid as a board, eyes flicking nervously between two parties. One, a young black man named Malcolm dressed in a tailored navy blue suit. The other, a sharply dressed white woman in her late 40s, arms crossed, lips pursed, and eyes narrowing like a hawk circling its prey. "Excuse me," she said, her voice slicing through the room like glass on tile. "There must be some mistake. He's sitting at my table." Malcolm glanced up from his menu. Calm, collected, confused. "I'm sorry, what's the issue?" The woman blinked like she just heard a dog talk. "The issue is that you're not supposed to be here." Malcolm looked at her with a quiet patience, like a teacher waiting for a student to finish an ignorant sentence. "This is table 7, correct?" "Yes," she snapped. "Exactly. My reservation was for table 7. So I don't know how you ended up here." The maitre d' cleared his throat. "Actually, ma'am, your reservation was for table 8. Mr. Carter here is at the correct table." The woman, her name was Barbara, but you know the type. The pearl earrings. The aggressively blonde bob. The kind of person who sends back a perfectly good steak because it's not medium right. In other words, a full-blown Karen, went stiff. Her face twitched like she just swallowed vinegar. "I always sit at this table," she hissed. "Every Thursday. Ask anyone here." Malcolm chuckled softly, glancing around at the quiet, curious diners watching the scene unfold. "Well, it's my first Thursday here. And I gotta say, it's not going great." The maitre d' offered a tight, diplomatic smile. "Ma'am, we'd be happy to seat you now at your reserved table. Right this way." Barbara didn't move. Instead, she stepped forward, planted her hands on the table, and said loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "I don't know what kind of riffraff you're letting in here now, but this place used to have standards." The room fell completely silent. Even the jazz trio in the corner stopped playing mid-note. Malcolm didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, just leaned back in his chair and looked up at her. "Ma'am," he said, voice smooth as velvet, "do you realize how racist you sound right now?" Gasps echoed around the room. Someone dropped a fork. Barbara turned beet red, then ghost white, then somewhere in between. "Oh, please," she spat. "Don't you dare pull the race card on me. I have black friends. I'm not racist. I'm just saying people like you don't usually eat here. That's all." The maitre d's face was a mask of horror. Malcolm stood now, slowly, calmly. And as he stood, it became clear he wasn't just anyone. He had presence, like someone used to commanding a room. "People like me," he repeated softly. "You mean educated people? Successful people? Or just people with dark skin?" Barbara opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And then, from the back of the restaurant, a voice rang out. "Malcolm, is that you?" Everyone turned. It was the restaurant's owner, an older Italian man in a crisp suit, walking toward them with his arms open wide. Barbara looked between the two of them, confused. The owner smiled and gave Malcolm a hug. "So glad you could make it, my friend. I kept table 7 just for you." Malcolm smiled. "Appreciate it, Tony." Tony turned to Barbara and raised an eyebrow. "Is there a problem here?" Barbara opened her mouth again, then closed it. There wasn't a version of this story that ended well for her now. But she wasn't going to let it go. Not yet. "Oh," she said, laughing nervously. "Just a little misunderstanding. Of course he belongs here. I just didn't recognize him." Tony frowned, then looked at Malcolm. Malcolm just nodded once. "It's cool." But it wasn't cool. Not really. Because what Barbara didn't know, what no one in that restaurant knew yet, was that this was far from over. This wasn't just some awkward moment in a restaurant. This was the beginning of something bigger. The rest of the night moved on, at least on the surface. Barbara sat 2 tables away at table 8, her back stiff as a board, pretending to enjoy her scallops. Her fake smile twitched every time Malcolm laughed, every time someone stopped by his table to greet him. But deep down, she was fuming. What made her more furious than being embarrassed in front of an entire restaurant was that she didn't know who he was. That bothered her more than it should have. She prided herself on knowing the city's power players, the CEOs, the donors, the invisible hands behind the velvet ropes. But Malcolm had walked in like he owned the place. And worse, Tony, the owner, had hugged him like family. So Barbara waited until Malcolm got up to take a call and stepped outside, his phone pressed to his ear, his silhouette framed against the rain-blurred window. That's when she made her move. She stood up and strode straight to the kitchen, past the maitre d', past the confused busboys, until she found Tony at the back by the wine fridge, laughing with a waiter. "Tony," she said, voice tight. He turned, wine bottle still in hand. "Barbara, something wrong with your dinner?" She forced a chuckle. "Oh, no. The scallops are wonderful. I just wanted to clear the air." Tony raised an eyebrow. "I'm afraid I may have come across a little harsh earlier," she continued. "You know how I get when my routine's off. But you can't blame me for being surprised. I mean, who is that guy?" Tony's smile faded. "He's a longtime friend," he said simply. Barbara tilted her head, her voice dropping a little. "Come on, Tony. Off the record. Is he a celebrity or something? I just want to know who I was accidentally rude to. That's all." Tony's eyes narrowed slightly. Then he leaned in, voice low. "You really want to know?" Barbara nodded, almost giddy. "He's the reason this place is still open," Tony said. That made her blink. "Excuse me? Malcolm Carter saved me from bankruptcy during COVID. Didn't ask for anything in return. No press, no favors. Just helped. He believed in this place. In me. I owe him more than I could ever repay." Barbara's face twitched. "He's a businessman." Tony shrugged. "Among other things." "Like what?" Tony hesitated, then smiled faintly. "You'll find out." Barbara stood there for a second too long, her cheeks burning. Then she turned and left the kitchen, her heels clacking like gunshots against the tile. The whispers started immediately. Tony didn't say anything, but the kitchen staff did. Quiet murmurs. Exchanges of looks. A single word floating between them. Her. Back at her table, Barbara picked at her dessert with no appetite. The lemon tart tasted like cardboard. Her wine, suddenly too bitter. Every time she looked at Malcolm, she felt like she was being watched, like the whole restaurant knew. And that's when she saw it. A young woman, no more than 24, approached Malcolm's table with nervous energy. She wore a plain blouse, thick glasses, and a lanyard that said Chicago Journal. She introduced herself and asked if she could interview him. Barbara's ears perked up. An interview? Here? Malcolm politely declined with a smile, but the reporter seemed persistent. "Just a few questions," she said. "The city's buzzing with rumors. You're on every executive shortlist. People are saying you're making moves." Barbara leaned in, pretending to stir her drink. "Making moves? Executive shortlists?" Malcolm finally said, "No comment." "Not tonight." But the seed had been planted. Barbara sat back in her chair, a million thoughts racing. She couldn't let this go. Not just because he embarrassed her, but because she was curious now. This man wasn't just anybody. He had influence, power, the kind you don't get just by being rich. And if he was who she thought he might be, then she had made a very dangerous mistake. Later that night, after the restaurant had mostly cleared out and the rain outside had turned into a steady drizzle, Malcolm stood by the valet stand waiting for his car. Barbara walked up slowly. "Listen," she said, her voice almost soft, almost human. "I may have misjudged you earlier." Malcolm didn't look at her. "I'm not proud of how I reacted. I guess I just wasn't expecting someone like you at my table." Now he turned. "Come even. Someone like me?" She bit her lip. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" Silence. Malcolm nodded. "Thought so." And then, before she could say another word, the valet pulled up with a sleek black Mercedes. Not flashy, elegant. Malcolm tipped the valet, opened the door, and paused. "Oh, and Barbara," he said, "enjoy the scallops next Thursday. It might be your last reservation here." He stepped in, drove off, and Barbara, she was left standing in the rain. Because what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that Malcolm was about to shake the entire restaurant industry in Chicago. And he had receipts. Barbara barely slept that night. She tossed and turned at her overpriced downtown condo, replaying the evening over and over again in her mind like a broken record. That smug look on Malcolm's face, the way Tony stood by him, the way people watched her. She'd built a life where perception was everything. Real estate mogul, nonprofit board member, city magazine cover. She threw charity galas and lunched with the mayor's wife. She wasn't supposed to be made to look small. Not by him. Not by anyone. So when she sat down at her sleek glass desk the next morning, still in her silk robe, coffee untouched, she opened her laptop and began to search. Not out of curiosity anymore, but out of fear. Malcolm Carter. She thought maybe he was just another businessman. But Google told a different story. Entrepreneur. Investor. Ex-attorney. Tech startup founder. His name was tied to 2 clean energy companies, 3 nonprofits, and a consulting firm that recently landed a major contract with the city. But what really caught her was an article headline. New coalition plans to reshape the city's hospitality industry by Malcolm Carter. She clicked. The article was bold. It wasn't just a plan. It was a manifesto. Malcolm was leading a quiet movement, a coalition of wealthy backers, restaurant owners, and civic leaders determined to expose systemic discrimination in the city's fine dining scene. Everything from hiring practices to seating arrangements to how certain guests were treated. Barbara's throat went dry. She kept scrolling. And there, halfway down the page, was the sentence that made her blood run cold. We've already begun compiling names of establishments and individuals who've exhibited patterns of exclusion, bias, or racial profiling. These patterns will be documented, made public, and submitted to the city council by the end of the quarter. Her name wasn't in the article, but she knew. She knew she was going to be on that list. 2 days later, a sleek black envelope arrived at Tony's restaurant, hand-delivered. No return address. Just one word written in gold lettering. Reveal. Tony opened it behind closed doors in his office. Inside was a single USB drive and a note. For your eyes only. You deserve to know who's been smiling in your face while cutting you down behind her back. Tony locked the door, plugged the drive into his laptop, and pressed play on the only file inside. It was audio. Crackly. Surveillance style. A conversation recorded at a dinner party. The voice was unmistakable. Barbara. Tony's a nice guy and all, but come on. His place is turning into some kind of diversity PR stunt. I've been eating there for years. Now it's like I need a DI badge just to get a reservation. The voice laughed, her laugh, then continued. And don't even get me started on that new investor of his. What's his name? Marcus? Malcolm? Something urban. I swear if I see one more press release about equity in fine dining, I'm going to puke. Tony sat there in stunned silence. That recording wasn't new. It was from months ago, before Malcolm ever walked through the doors. Before the table incident. He remembered that dinner party. He'd catered it himself. Trusted everyone there. Until now. Meanwhile, across the city, Malcolm sat in a quiet office downtown, watching the rain through a wide window. He'd heard back from 3 more restaurant owners. 2 confirmed. 1 denied. But all of them knew about Barbara. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. You ready for the next move? Malcolm stared at the screen. He thought about letting it go. He really did. But then he remembered the way she looked at him. Like he didn't belong. Like his presence was a mistake. And that's when he typed back. Send the email. Barbara's inbox dinged at exactly 11 a.m. Subject line, regarding your public profile. She clicked it. Inside was a plain message. Barbara, you are being named in an upcoming article about discriminatory practices in Chicago's restaurant scene. You will have the opportunity to provide a statement. You may also choose to step down from any hospitality-related boards before this goes public. Sincerely, the Coalition for Transparency in Dining. No name, no phone number, just a ticking clock. Her hand shook as she deleted the message, but of course it wasn't really gone, because in less than 48 hours, her name would be everywhere. And this time, she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of it.